Good evening to all the members online today. Thank you very much for taking time to join us today for our session, where we will be discussing leading and managing change. Before I introduce our wonderful panelists, we have our MENCO chairperson and deputy chairperson here, who will just give us a word of welcome, and then we can kickstart with the session today. Over to you, Lishone and Mandisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolwazi, for taking the burden of leading the session tonight. On behalf of Johannesburg Management Committee, we take pleasure in welcoming all participants online to this session. Ideally, the world has changed in a split second around about February, March 2020. That's almost 2 years ago. And that have actually led to many ways of change in how we live, we interact, and we do all aspects of life like we used to in the past. Tonight's session is meant to put us together to rethink first on how we manage our personal lives under these circumstances. Second, on how we lead others that we lead in the workplace, in our entrepreneurial space. And third, on how we manage teams where we work with teams. But importantly, lastly, on how we navigate throughout this new norm which is touted. The truth is that over and beyond the new norm that is spoken religiously, life is going to change completely. This month and the next month, a number of companies have started rolling up their mandatory vaccination policy, which means a change of life in aspect that remote working should also be or could be abolished very soon. Over and above that, a professor at UNISA have written that remote working might not be yielding the results that we envisage. All of this could mean that in the workspace, in the entrepreneurial space, and in our personal life, everything else is going to change. We might no longer be wholly conformed to our homes. We might no longer wholly be working remotely. But over and above that, there's an add-on of Fourth Industrial Revolution, which will impact that. Tonight's session aims to guide and to instill new ways of life as we advance completely to new norm on how to lead our lives, to lead our families, to lead the teams we have in the workplace, and over and above that, also to manage our professional careers. With that, I officially welcome you to this session and feel at home to engage under the engagement session. I thank you, Nolwazi.
Thank you so much, Chair. As I mentioned, today we will be going through leading and managing change and looking at processes and system management for effective goal achievement. My name is Nolwazi Mti, and I will be facilitating this session today. And as part of our panel, we have Dr. Maureen Tong, and she is an international lawyer, a published author, an academic, and a businesswoman, as well as the CEO of Coach Champion South Africa, as well as Ms. Phapedi Mieza, who is the Chief Financial Officer of South African Aviation Authority. And they are going to speak to us today about how to lead and to manage change through times like these, as Lishone has mentioned, through a post-COVID world, and adjusting to what we now call the new normal, as well as how to really still focus on your goals and achieve all the goals that you had set to accomplish yourself, especially as Mr. Mohale had mentioned in the opening video. As the BMF, we are very passionate about managerial and leadership development, so that is what is key to us today. So some of the key takeaways that we're hoping to get from our panelists, as well as through conversation with all the participants online today, is interventions on how to keep up with the pace of change, as I mentioned, while still being able to focus on your goals, and seeing how we can use things around us like technology and all the changes around us to leverage them for our success. And so we will first allow both our speakers to take us through their prepared presentations, and then we will open the floor up for a Q&A session. So please feel free to write down your questions on the chat box, and we will come back to you as soon as they are done. And I would like to start off with you, Dr. Marie. Please just share with us on the topic that we've now spoken and how we can effectively lead and manage through all the disruptions in not only our personal lives, but in our professional lives as well.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the introduction. Thanks for the invitation. This must be about the third or fourth time I'm speaking at BMF. So I'm certainly am very pleased about the continued invitations. And today, especially, it is from, I received the invitation through Lisweni. So I'm trying to get my presentation here. Let me share my presentation. There it is. Is it on?
Yes, it's on. Thank you, Dr.
Excellent. Thank you. And let me quickly put it on, what do you call it? Let me put it on presentation mode. There it is. Wonderful. So thanks again for the invitation. I love being here. I love being at BMF. Thanks for continuing to invite me. I hope you'll invite me again. Today, I was asked to speak about leading and managing through crisis and change. You'll see that I will deliberately focus specifically on change and change management specifically instead of crisis. Thanks for the invitation, but I like also showing up a bit and say, these are the kind of things I do. And as probably introduced, yes, I'm an internationally a credential coach of the International Coaching Federation. I've been a leader, held leadership position at Coaches and Mentors of South Africa. I teach leadership at Wits Business School. I sit on the council of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I'm on the board of Legal Aid South Africa. Yes, I've written this book, Point Your Soul, Let Your Cup Overflow, which is very relevant for today's talk. And currently, actually, I am CEO of SA Seychelles Travel and Tours. From 1 January 2022, my role has changed in relation to Coach Companion South Africa, Coach Companion. Instead of being CEO of the local company, I'm now the local agent, and I am now CEO of a company called SA Seychelles Travel and Tours. The focus of the company is to organize leadership retreats, coaching sessions at the beautiful islands of the Seychelles Islands. They don't call it paradise for nothing. So I'm hoping that the participants are listening and some of them would find this sort of relevant. I'm looking forward to doing business with you. Leadership retreats, coaching sessions, the works on the Seychelles Islands. So today I'll talk about, and I understand I have only 20 minutes, I'm timing myself. I'm managing and leading through crisis and change, the things I want to speak about. I'll just, for a few minutes, I'll talk about the company, Coach Companion Scandinavia, which is the coaching company, talk about what is coaching, and especially, and I'm doing this deliberately because there's a lot of correlation between coaching and change management. You'll see as I speak now. The Propeller Method, which is quite important, having heard that today you'd like to focus on how to lead self, how to lead others, and how to lead teams. This is a unique methodology that we have at Coach Companion. I'll talk about leadership styles and which ones are most suitable for us to manage change, new approaches to leadership, and the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief and the principles of change management. As I've said, I'm an international coach, so I do coaching every day. And I always say that once you become a coach, you don't unbecome a coach when you lead other roles of your life. Once you are a coach, you do not unbecome a coach when you're in relationships, when you're in the workplace, when I'm training at Wits Business School, when I'm a manager, when I'm being a businesswoman, in anything else that I do. The International Coaching Federation defines coaching as a partnership with a client. And this is where coaching is really different from, for example, mentorship. Mentorship, I always say, if you want to see the difference, the most basic difference between coaching and mentorship is that the coach will give you the tools and the ability to get where you need to go, and mentor will help you how to get there. So a mentor is somebody you know, who's been where you've been, who has networks, who has opportunities, who knows people, who is more skilled than yourself, and that's why you're asking them to be your mentor, who's going to help you get ahead. A coach, on the other hand, is going to give you the tools on how to get there by yourself, because your coach is your partner, sees you as an equal, believes that you are capable and you are able, and there are things you'd like to achieve, goals to achieve, or something to change. So coaching, therefore, is a partnership with you as client in a thought-provoking and creative process. When you work with a coach, you are creating something, either something new by way of goals or a change that you'd like to achieve in your life that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So coaching is really about getting you to be the best version of yourself. We say in coaching, you carry yourself wherever you go. You might play the role of father, mother, girlfriend, partner, sister, daughter, colleague, member of the community, neighbor. These are roles that you play. As you play these roles, you carry the essence of who you are in those roles. Your dreams, your aspirations, your anxieties, your fears, your wishes for your life. You carry all of that wherever you go. And that's why it's very important, therefore, and in coaching, we always start with the self. We coach the authentic self, because indeed, as the topic of today says, and with the introduction that this one gave just now, before you can lead others, you should be able to lead yourself. Before you lead teams, you should be able to lead yourself. So coaching is essentially about that, about self-leadership. It helps individuals, organizations to improve performance, find balance, achieve goals, set goals, achieve organizational outcomes, etc. Identify current constraints and explore new possibilities. So coaching is always forward-looking. Yes, other professions exist that are compatible and work in partnership with coaching. For example, therapy exists. You could see a therapist, you could see a psychologist. So those professions exist parallel to and in collaboration with coaching. A therapist will help you deal with what has happened in the past. What are the behaviors that are impeding you from achieving what you'd like to achieve? What are the things that happened in the past that are impeding you from going into the future? Coaching is looking into the future. We always say you need to be coachable to have the benefit of the coaching experience. That means there must be something you'd like to achieve or something you'd like to change. And that's why you see, therefore, the nexus between coaching and change management. The 18 coaching competencies as identified by the International Coaching Federation, there they are. I'll share the presentation. I don't have to go through each one of them right now. I just want to talk about our methodology at Coach Companion. We call it the Volcano Coaching. We believe that like a volcano, as a person that's always simmering, we see you as somebody who has dreams and aspirations, who has wishes, who have things that you'd like to achieve, but there's something that you are inherently capable of doing. You have some natural gifts and talents that you have. You have all these things that you could do. So we use coaching to be like the fire beneath you as a volcano. You know, a volcano is something that is always threatening to explode. So we use coaching to help that fire, to light that fire underneath you, to let it, build up and then eventually explode into success, prowess, abundance, happiness, prosperity, all the beautiful things. So that is our methodology in a nutshell. Now, the Propeller Method, which is uniquely established by Coach Companion, we believe that, like a propeller, imagine an aeroplane. An aeroplane has this inside the wheel, this propeller that helps it to fly. So the propeller, please excuse that thing at the end, but I see that, I forgot to remove a logo of another company I spoke to. Please unsee it. So we believe that in our method, in our Propeller Method, to be really effective as a leader, you need to have all three capabilities. You need to have good managerial abilities and competencies. You need to have good leadership competencies, but it is just as important for you to have coaching competencies. And you use this at different times as and when it's necessary. But this you use as a way to propel yourself to be the best that you can be in whatever that you'd like to achieve. So in our methodology at Coach Companion, we use the Propeller Method. The Wheel of Life is the universally used instrument that is used in coaching called the Wheel of Life or the Balance Wheel. And at the core of it is simply this: for you to be truly effective as a person, you need to have balance in terms of all the 8 dimensions of life. If you only succeed with career, for example, you end up like the monk that sold his safari, because his life was so completely out of balance. He achieved an incredible lot of success with his career, but this came at the expense of his health, for example, his relationships, for example. He might have made a lot of money, but there was zero romance in his life, and his personal and spiritual development was seriously lacking. So in coaching, we believe that you should at all times try to find balance in terms of the all. of the 8 dimensions of life: career, business, family, and friends. By this, we mean the quality of the relationships that you have. It's not about how many friends you have, or whether you have family or not, or whether you have a big family or not. It's about the quality of the relationships. Finances is important to all of us, and that's personal finances. Before you can be a good CFO, I'm sure everybody knows, before you can be a big CEO of a big multinational company, you need to be able to know how to manage your own personal finances and have balance as far as it's concerned. Romance and intimacy is very important. And women always laugh when I talk about this. And this is the thing, because there is this belief that, you know, as women, you need to be approached by somebody before you have romance or intimacy in your life. I say, hell no. If you are responsible for other dimensions, who says you need to be a passive recipient of romance and intimacy? But the point about it is this: when you are anchored in strong personal relationships, it empowers you to be even better in your career, in the other aspects of your life. Healthcare, self-care, especially now in this time of the pandemic and after. I don't have to say anything. I mean, currently right now, as a country, we are mourning the loss of one of our really young, upcoming, highly talented Ricky Ross, artist. And I always say that kind of loss of life should never happen. It should not happen if there is help that is available. And as society, we really need to be looking out for each other, especially during this time. A lot has been written about since the pandemic, you know, the sub-pandemic to the health, to the COVID-19 pandemic is mental health struggles. A lot of people are struggling as far as mental health is concerned. Employers need to really spend time in looking after our personnel. You don't have to have lost a family member yourself. You don't have to have lost a person that you know, but we are constantly surrounded by news of loss, of death. People that we know are losing jobs. Those of us that are working, people around us are being retrenched. So there's an incredible amount of factors, of trauma triggers in life right now. And it's very important during this time to ensure that we are looking after our self-care and our health really well. Social and fun, as you define it for yourself, how you define it for yourself, but make sure that it's one of the 8 dimensions of life that you look after. Your spiritual development, you can be spiritual or personal, is just as important. The physical environment, the home and office in some places have become one thing. When in the past, there was a clear distinction of this is my office and this is my home. In some situations, in many people that are now working from home, and a number of employers have already made the decision that some categories of employees will never return to the office full time. So the importance of also paying attention to a physical environment is very important. Here, I just talk about the general differences about management and leadership, but I don't want to go into a lot of detail. I teach on leadership, and that's why I thought to put up this slide. I'll share about 3 slides on leadership as well. I'm watching the time. I really like the Goldman framework of the 6 leadership styles, because it does this from an emotional intelligence perspective. Goldman has written the definitive book on emotional intelligence. Has become really well known the world over about his work on emotional intelligence. Recently, he's written about another book on social intelligence, and I suspect he'll in future also write about cultural intelligence as well. But he basically says, for you, in terms of seeing what kind of leader you are, and the thing about this framework is basically to say that a good leader is one who knows when he needs to display more of the commanding style of leadership, when to be a visionary leader, when to be an affiliate leader, when to be a democratic leader, when to be a place-setting leader, and when to be a coach. A true leader is one who understands that this situation, who has the discernment that right now, the style I need to use right now is the one that says, come with me, or people come first. What do you think we should do? Or the one when you need to command, as when you are now, say, in leadership, you are dealing with KPIs, etc. Do what I tell you to do. So at certain points, you do need to use one or other style of leadership. A good leader is one who knows which style of leadership is most important and relevant. The new approaches or new trends in leadership are for transformational leadership. We talk a lot about that. There's a lot of talk of servant leadership and ethical leadership. I sit on a board, and the issue of ethical leadership are always central on what makes a good, in corporate governance, what makes a good board member, a person who sits on a council, etc. Servant leadership simply means that when you lead people, you must understand that the people that you lead also have expectations of you as their leader. It's not just about you making, having expectations of your followers, but the people that you lead also have expectations of you. Transformational leadership, I always say, women find it easier to be transformational leaders, perhaps because of the way that we are trained. Well, as you know, as the natural style of women mostly is transformational leadership. Transactional leadership applies mostly in management. When you are being a manager, when you are setting KPIs, when you are setting out this is what needs to be achieved, must be achieved in this way, at this time, these are the expectations. If you don't do this, these are the consequences. That's transactional. You do this, you get this. You perform, you get a promotion. You perform, you stay in your job. You perform, everything is happy, we're happy in the workplace. So it's a transaction type of leadership. It has its place, especially when we're predominantly in the management role, but predominantly in a transactional type of leadership. When you move over, even as a manager, you can choose to be transformational as well. This is where you add issues of coaching, of leadership, where you are leading with integrity. It doesn't mean that when transactional, you're not leading with integrity, but that's why here we are more about building the people that you are leading in order to achieve greatness in themselves and to achieve more and better. Servant leadership is all about, and some people say, when you cannot talk about a servant leader, that sounds like an oxymoron because of our notion of what a servant is, what a servant is. But what it simply means is that as you lead, as I said, be mindful of the people that you lead. You need to lead with civility, with respect. You need to, you need to show trust. You need to be accountable. You need to be selfless. You listen to the people that you lead, etc. So for me, there's no contradiction in the idea of servant leadership. Servant leadership is also strongly aligned to coaching and mentorship as well. Ethical leadership, obviously, and all about justice, about respect for others. Honesty is at the center of ethical leadership, leading by example. I don't have to go into what is the impact of lapses of ethical leadership in South Africa. We know too well. There have been too many corporate scandals that have happened. There have been too many scandals once in our state-owned enterprises, in VBS Bank, we know Steinhoff, so many other examples. And at the center of that is simply when we have lapses in ethical leadership, the ripple effect is often felt in the rest of the society. The relationship between coaching and mentorship, between coaching and change management is not by chance. There's currently a very strong collaboration between the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, of which I'm a member, with whom I am credentialed, and on whose behalf I train coaches to become credentialed internationally, to be internationally certified. There's a very strong collaboration right now between the ICF and the Association of Change Management Professionals. I know that the ACMP, Association of Change Management Professionals, is setting up a chapter in South Africa, and they call it an emerging chapter. There was an AGM that happened last week. I was invited to attend. So they're always reaching out to coaches because they understand the relationship between coaching and change management. Before COVID happened, we talked about 4IR, the machine learning, digital innovation, how the fourth industrial revolution was going to change the world. Of course it has, and that's why right now, in the time of COVID, there's been an incredible acceleration in terms of development for digital innovation as well. That's why we're having these webinars. Yesterday in the evening, I had a long coaching session with clients in the USA. I can train people in Saudi Arabia, a country I would otherwise not ever find myself in, but through digital innovation and changing technology, I can be training people from any part of the world. And for me, this has been the benefit. We spoke of the VUCA world before before COVID happened. We're talking about how the 4IR was going to lead to a VUCA world that is so volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And guess what? When COVID happened, it became much, 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 much more so. Whatever we thought about was going to happen with the 4IR has been 10 times increased with COVID. But as this happens, as there's a lot and a lot more learning by machines. As machines, artificial intelligence has exploded so much, and the acceleration has been especially more during COVID. There's also a need to focus on the so-called soft issues. And soft issues are becoming even more important, not only because, as I said, COVID has caused a lot of trauma to a lot of us and to a whole lot of us in society, but also because coaching is also important because it's always about setting new goals and managing change. As the world changes, it means that our goals also are going to change. It means that at an individual level, we also need to be setting new goals for ourselves. Companies need to be are reviewing their business models in light of what has happened. So change is happening on so many levels, and therefore I cannot overemphasize what it means. What change, the importance of change during this time. Change management theories is essentially based on grief, and I'm not surprised by that. The origins of theories of change management are really based on the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, where she was a very well-known psychologist who talked about and modeled this and made this 5 stages of grief very, very well famous, etc. And of course, you'll see just now in the next 2 slides that other people have taken the model and look at it further. Essentially, this is what she says, or this is what the model says. Whenever change happens, typically the first reaction is shock. Shock that this has happened, disbelief that this has happened, frustration, and then depression. It does not have to happen in that straight line, but these are the different stages of grief. When change happens, when grief happens, the feelings, the emotions, the stages that we go through emotionally are very similar, both for change management, whatever the cause of the change. It could be the end of a marriage, it could be the loss of a job, it could be leaving the city, living in a new city, changing house. The stages that people go through whenever they are in grief or mourning, and when they go through change, are very similar. And the next stage of depression, now depending on the emotional strength of the person or the support system they have access to, and hence I spoke a lot more earlier about the importance of looking after ourselves, especially during this time of COVID. Some people do not get over depression, and some, sadly and tragically, end up taking their lives. Just to say, it is possible to get past the depression stage. With enough support, it is possible. With professional support, it is possible. After the depression stage, a lot of people go through experimentation. Okay, so this change has happened. It is now permanent. The example of, say, at the end of a marriage, typically when one partner leaves, the one who does not want the relationship or does not want the marriage to end, obviously would be holding on and hoping that the partner who's leaving might change their minds. If they still eventually leave, obviously they'll go through the stage of depression. After it has happened, they go through the next stage, which is one that says, okay, let me make peace with what has happened, but what can I get from this deal? Let me see what life looks like without this partner that I've had for a very long time. That's the stage that we call experimentation. At a certain point, then the person will make the decision that I accept that this relationship is over, this job has come to an end, I've lost my partner for life, either through death or divorce, and let me then take a decision that I'm going to make a change and a permanent change in my life. From the Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages of grief, Fischer has developed this, what he calls the personal transition curve. And this curve works personally, in organizations, and elsewhere. And my focus whenever I talk about change management is to focus on the human being. You can bring the changes in whatever the trigger for the change. Maybe you are changing the business model. Maybe you are completely rewriting. Maybe you are going in the business through restructuring or whatever it is that you are doing. If you do not focus on the human beings and how they are receiving the change, processing the change, then whatever the need for the change that has happened, you may not have a lasting change process. So the Fischer model simply shows us, if you look at this, I think a lot of us, you can imagine a certain stage in your life when change happened and you went through this many different stages of that change. Initially, people go through anxiety, some go through complacency. People who've worked for a very long time in government will tell you, there are some people who say, I've been through 10 DGs. The current one will come and go, I'll still be here. So those are the people that choose the complacence, that I say, change, what change? Who says, it's fine, it will pass me by. So, but typically people go through the anxiety stage. You know, what does this mean? Why is this happening? But some people would be especially happy that the change that they have always wished for is finally happening. So change hits people in different ways. Some would be very happy, finally. And this might have been the group that have been the triggers for change, or that have instigated the change. You know, Fischer in another article called Leading Change speaks about how in some situations, managers themselves can deliberately even sabotage processes in order to trigger change. How much time do I still have? 3 minutes or less?
Yes, about 3 minutes.
Okay, let me rush through. Thank you. So some people will be happy, some will go through anxiety. Others will be fearful. How does this change impact me? What impact will this have in my life? What does this mean? Others will be angry, you know? I'm very angry. I have lost prestige because of this change. I've lost my status, my social standing because of this change. Maybe there's been retrenched, maybe there's been, retrenchments, restructuring, whatever it is, maybe it's personal. So anger is part of that can happen. And then as people go into depression, they go through, this is bigger than I thought. Others go into denial. Change, what change? It's not going to happen. And these are the people, whenever you implement the change management process, you need to pay attention to. The people that are in denial, or those that are going to even sabotage the change, you need to really spend time to ensure you look after them as well. And then so it goes, and then others become disillusioned and leave. And sometimes, indeed, leaving an organization, if you feel that this is not the kind of change I want for my life, this does not go with my personal values, this does not go with what I want for my life, separating may be the best decision. But after all of that is happening, you'll see that people go through gradual acceptance. As they start to accept change, then they start to see, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe this marriage was in fact not good for me. Maybe this job was a part of my journey, and maybe I'm meant for greater and bigger and better things. As they start to have that gradual acceptance, then they start to move forward, and they accept the change. And some of them even become the best advocates of this change. The most important thing about this is to say that human beings by nature do not like change. And this is whenever you implement the change management process, when people resist, understand that they might be going through any one of these stages of change, and accept that it is part of human nature for people to resist, deny, be disillusioned, walk away. Some will accept, some will move far quicker to the end result because perhaps it benefits them. The trick is embrace all of them and make them part of the journey. So it is very important in change management to always address the human side. The human factor is far more important. I always say companies, you can buy software, you can buy new software processes, some systems, but it is humans, it's people that build organizations. So it's very important. And when the change needs to happen, it needs to be modeled right from the top. Be sure to involve all layers of the organization, make a formal, case for why change is taking place, carry your people with you, create ownership of the process, communicate to people why this change is taking place, ensure that you change the culture of the organization and prepare for the unexpected. Create a sense of agency, create a guiding coalition, who I call change ambassadors, always important. Develop a vision and a strategy for why this change is taking place. Communicate it empower the people that need to do it, create short-term wins, celebrate quick wins, consolidate and do it. And all these things that I'm referring to in terms of organizations, they can just as equally apply to yourself as a person, because you're talking about leadership at self, leading others and leading teams. If something needs to change, even if it's at a personal level, understand the urgency of the change. If you really need for it to happen, work with it. Creating guiding coalition, look for people that are happy with the process. Be clear about what vision and the strategy you're going to implement. Communicate to yourself and those around you why this change is taking place. Create, especially number 6, create short-term wins, quick wins, and celebrate. Because the more you celebrate, the more you embrace the change, the more you see it happen, the more you find it easy to happen. The last one, anchor new approaches in the culture of an organization. At a personal level, model the new behavior of change that you'd like to see. So 8 mistakes that happens in leading change is when people don't really see the need for change. Be sure that you are attending to this, you are paying attention to it. If it's about you, if you are implementing change half-heartedly, you're not going to be successful in doing it. Ensure there's high-level buy-in at organizational level, at a personal level, ensure that you know why you are doing it. And whenever people see that the promised land is difficult, they cannot envision it, then it is easy for them to just give up. People, when they do not hear the message often enough about why change is taking place, if they don't know how to act in the new change, and that's why it's very important for leaders to always model in their behavior, behaviorally model the new change, so that others can see the importance and the benefits of the change, and ensure that you carry the people with you. And whenever you make a personal decision, number 8, keep the door to the past closed. Because if it's half open, if you think it is still possible to go back, you will not. The change will not last. So you need to ensure that the door to the past is firmly closed. You need to embrace the new that you are looking into, that you'd like to go to. And you need to really be convinced that's what you want to do. Thank you so much. That's me in the time that I have, and I'll be very happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maureen. That was very, very inspirational. I know I took about 5 pages of notes from this, and I hope everyone else is taking notes and they have their questions ready for our Q&A session. So I'd like to also then start engaging Ms. Papedi, who is in the technological environment. And you mentioned, the 4th Industrial Revolution and how technology has changed. So I think she'd be better suited to speak to us about how can we actually leverage technology, and how do we just adapt to all these changes that are coming with all the buzzwords that we hear, and then we get nervous about what's coming for us. So how do we adapt to those changes? Over to you, Ms. Papedi.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk to BMF. I remember I actually joined the student desk of BMF when I was still at TNT many years ago, and so I'm very much excited to be joining you again once again. And I just thought I should just correct the fact that I'm not the CFO. I wish I was the CFO. I'm actually the Chief Information Officer for the Civil Aviation Authority. So at the Civil Aviation Authority, as I've already said. So I will talk to you about the 2 crises that I've had to go through. Well, I'll only refer to two crises. So in 2019, on the 1st of July, I went to work as normal. I was preparing myself for the day. I had many meetings for that particular day. And when I got to the office on around 7 o'clock, one of my team members came to my office and he said to me, "Ma'am, I think we might have been hacked." In ICT, we always talk about it's only a matter of time before you get hacked. And it's not a matter of if you will get hacked, it's a matter of when you get hacked. And in ICT, we always have a business continuity plan in the event of such things as cyber attacks, and or if the building burns down, or in the event that for whatever reason we are not able to restore services. But nothing ever really prepares you for the real life of what a disaster looks like or what a crisis looks like. So on that particular day, it was really a proper crisis. We were not prepared for it. We did not think it would happen to us. We always think it will happen to other people. And most of the time we do prepare, we have disaster recovery plans, we do dry runs about these disaster recovery plans. And truth be told, most of them, they are good on paper until the crisis actually happened to you. So needless to say that fast forward 2 weeks later, the organization was up and running. But even as much as we had all the plans, like I just said, nothing could have prepared us for real life. So when the crisis called COVID-19 took place, we were fortunate in that we already had a dry run called the cyber attack in 2019. So we all know that COVID-19 actually started on or around 2019 in China. They were not prepared or ready to communicate about it, but eventually they did communicate about that towards the end. And then what then happened was that we had the first case in South Africa on the 5th of March. And as with any other shock, the country did not immediately react. I remember thinking, why are we not closing the borders? Why are we not closing the borders? And unfortunately, it took another 2 to 3 weeks before the country was actually under lockdown. But by the time, in actual fact, because we had already experienced a crisis the year before, and that was still very fresh in our minds. By the time when we heard that there was a first incident on the 1st of March, the ICT team at Civil Aviation Authority, we started preparing for the possibility that South Africa will also follow the same process that all other countries were following, and that is that of a hard lockdown. So in as much as people were still talking about what would happen, what's going to happen, and of course we were worried, we were nervous. This was a new terrain. We had never had a lockdown before. We didn't know how bad the situation would be. I remember in Italy, people were just dying all over. But in the midst of all of that, we had to keep our head above the waters and make sure that we are able to prepare for when the country eventually goes lockdown. I remember during that time, the president had not yet pronounced on the lockdown, but we were already sending out notifications to the staff to say, this is how you log in from home. We were making sure that each and every employee had access to VPN. We made sure that everyone that had Teams on their machines. And we also made sure that we checked how many people had desktops and how many people had laptops. And what I've learned from the two crises is that I would prefer a crisis that is coming, and I can see that this crisis is coming, than a crisis that shocks you. So the crisis that shocks you is that it does not prepare you mentally, and the crisis that prepares you is it helps in that you are psychologically prepared for it. There are a lot of scenarios that you play in your head. You already have different options and different ways that you're thinking, if this happened, this is how I would respond. If this happened, and this is how I will respond. One of the greatest and most important thing that I've learned throughout the crisis was that you needed to have a strong, you have to be mentally prepared, you have to have the willpower, and you have to make sure that you don't make it about you. It's not about you. It's about the organization. It's about the crisis. It's about how we make sure that everybody else in the team makes it throughout that particular crisis. And I think one of the lessons that we have learned and that we need to continue to learn is that most of the time, the signs are always there when a crisis is about to happen. Of course, in a case of a cyber attack, the signs are not always there, but you may know of your own vulnerabilities and weaknesses as an organization. But when a crisis comes, it actually prepares you. We knew in 2019 that this thing would happen. We were aware on the 5th of March that already there was a case in the country. And that I think I remember thinking, because the aircraft landed in OR Tambo. However, this person was a resident of Durban, or I mean the KZN Midlands, but there was no clear explanation about, okay, so we are only concerned about the fact that this person landed in OR Tambo. What about the flight that this person took between OR Tambo and Durban airport or Ushaka airport, and then what about all the people that were in that particular aircraft? So that was one of the things that I felt we needed to prepare for. And while we may think that we've made it through this crisis called COVID, I think it's actually just a wave that we went through. Unfortunately, I wish I could say that the storm is over. The storm is not yet over. For those, for some of us, COVID was a crisis. For capitalists, or some capitalists rather, in actual fact, COVID was a dry run. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that what we learned in the past 2 years is that you actually don't need to have employees for 8 hours a day. And the fact of the matter is, truth be told again, is that not all employees are busy for 8 hours a day. And employers know this. Employers have always known this. And employers also know now that I can actually hire someone who is sitting in Zanzibar and they don't have to come to the office. I don't have to spend money on the cost of an office and the cost of telephony system, and that person can work from wherever they are. But then also what the employers are also noticing is that we may not even need to have employees that are full-time on our payroll. You can actually convert employment contracts into freelancing contracts. And I don't think a lot of people are preparing for that crisis that's coming. The crisis that's coming is that possibly a lot of people in actual future, when you juxtapose the crisis that was COVID and you look at what 4th IR can do, you will realize that, I mean, no employer wants a labor unrest on their hands. No employer wants to deal, especially the capitalistic ones. No employer wants to deal with the fact that every now and then employees will demand an above average, above inflation rate increase. And therefore, if they had the option to choose between a robot and a human being, they would probably choose a robot. But also what they're also realizing is that if I can convert all these employment contracts into freelancing contracts, then no freelancer will say to me that they want an increment every year. No freelancer will say to me that they want to be a member of a union. And what that means is that while we may think that working from home is a nice thing, and it is a nice thing, we are enjoying it, but we also need to be aware that with this crisis, there is an introduction of, there's a saying that says that never waste a good crisis. And this may be a good crisis for the capitalist. And it's something that I don't think that as South Africans and as the middle class mainly, we are prepared and or aware of what exactly is coming our way. And it's something that I think that we need to be mindful. So how do you prepare for a crisis? You need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be aware of the things that could go wrong. For example, those that follow politics would tell you that the war that is currently happening between Ukraine and Russia was always coming because of the historic relationship that Russia and Ukraine has. And when Ukraine decided that they wanted, or they were considering to side with NATO, then obviously it would have upsetted Russia. And that could have been, whether this is a calculated move on the part of Ukraine or not, it's a different topic altogether. But what I'm trying to say is that it is not always the case that a crisis would come to us as a surprise. And I know that a lot of organizations also we always have these governance documents that we do in government. They always say that we need to do this so that when the auditors come, they don't give us an audit finding. And I cringe every time somebody says that, because you're actually not doing it for the auditors. You need to be doing it for yourselves to be prepared. You are not preparing a business continuity plan to satisfy the auditors. Make sure that the business continuity plans that you have are actually plans that would be able to be implementable during a crisis. Make sure that you review them every now and then. Make sure that when you do a crisis, a dry run or a test of that business continuity plan, you do a thorough one. I mean, I know back in the days before lockdown and whatnot, you would find that the organization or the risk departments or divisions would say that we need to have a dry run of the business continuity. Let's act as if there's fire in the building, and people will just be strolling out of the building. Somebody will go and look for their handbag, look for their laptop, just to make sure that they don't lose their own devices or valuables. But the fact of the matter is, in the event of a crisis, none of those things would matter. You would not be worried about your laptop. You would not be worried about your handbag. You will only be worried about your life. And I'm not convinced that we take planning for disaster as importantly as we should. I'm not convinced that as a people and as South Africa, we take crisis management as importantly as we should. But the important message that I want to just send is that crises are not always a surprise. You need to always be aware of your environment. You need to always be prepared for any eventuality. There is also another crisis called the fourth IR. I know when politicians talk about fourth IR, they talk about creation of jobs. They talk about employing the youth. The fact of the matter is, the only way we can create jobs with fourth IR is if we build industries. That is, if we start talking to companies such as Apple, and talk to companies that manufacture robotics, and talk to companies that manufacture devices and tablets, and say to them, look, we've got a very youthful generation in South Africa. Set up factories and industries in the villages. Make sure that our own children, and in actual fact, we actually don't even need to have a qualification or a degree rather, in order for you to assemble a device. You just need to be told how to do it. And if we are not preparing for that as South Africa, the amount of joblessness that we have as a country, the amount of unemployment, the amount of the continued frustration among the youth about having qualifications and not being able to work, it's only the beginning, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. And I think I'm not convinced that as a collective, as South Africa, we are actually prepared for the crisis that is coming. I don't believe that COVID was the worst that happened to us. Of course, we lost loved ones. Of course, we lost jobs. But I want to believe that if we are not prepared for the crisis, that is, if we are not prepared for fourth IR as an opportunity, it will certainly be the end of us, the middle class. It will be the end of economic activity in this country. And we are going to get to a position whereby companies in South Africa are actually appointing people that are not even in the country. It's all good and well that South Africans, the middle class particularly, are complacent about the fact that most of the people that are working in the low income earning brackets are actually immigrants from other countries. But what people don't realize is that in actual fact, even the middle class is replaceable, and even the middle class will be replaced soon, because when you appoint somebody to work from home, that person does not need a visa. That person does not need a working visa rather. That person can be sitting anywhere in the world, and they'll be working as an employee of South Africa. Thank you. I'll take questions from this.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fakei. Thank you. I see we don't have any questions as yet from the participants, but please feel free to post your questions on the Q&A box, or you can put it on the chat box. But I think while we wait for the participants to just digest all the conversations. Oh, I see there is one question from Kabelo Ledwaba. Would you mind just typing it out for us so that we can listen to your question? So you can put it on the Q&A, or you can put it on the chat box, and then we will ask the question. But while we wait for Gabriela to just type out the question, I would just like to ask, I mean, you mentioned how as a country, as a people, we really are not ready for a crisis, and we all know what they say about hindsight being the greatest teacher. So in line with the 5 stages of grief, because I would believe that when you are going through crisis, there is some element of loss. I mean, you mentioned the 2 weeks that the company was not working. For you, it was, stress of getting everyone back. For other people, it was loss of profits and, through COVID and all of that. But how do you reconcile the two? Because, I mean, you've mentioned, both of our speakers have really mentioned how the self is important, but in the same breath, the organizational changes are also important. How do you then reconcile that with dealing with these crises? So either Dr. Maureen or Ms. Fafedi can answer that one. Thank you.
So I think for any organization, your employees are your most important capital. And I know we say this as a cliche, but that is a fact. When your employees are not engaged, when your employees don't believe in the vision of the organization, when your employees are not emotionally involved or they're going through stressful, you can write all the best strategies in the world. You can have all the values that you publish on your websites and on your board. But if your employees don't feel like part of the organization, and if the employees don't feel that they belong, those strategies and those values don't mean anything to them. There's a saying that says that culture is a strategy for breakfast. If your employees feel like the culture is oppressing them, if your employees feel like they are not valued and they are not important to the organization, it doesn't matter what you do, that they will not show up. But when your employees feel that you involve them, when your employees feel that you care about their well-being and their families, and when the employees feel that you are always there for them and you understand when they have a crisis and when they're not able to show up, the employees will make sure that they make sure that they show up for the organization and they are there for you. And this has been proven actually during lockdown. Most employees are much more engaged and much more involved, were much more engaged and much more involved during lockdown, and they were willing to work beyond even the normal working hours because of the fact that in between them being able to do their work, they're also able to care for their loved ones. They're also able to make sure that while they're earning a salary, at least they can make sure that their children are taken care of. If they have got a loved one that has tested positive for COVID, they're also able to take care of them. And they value the employer more because of the fact that they're using the employer's time and their employer's money for them to be able to take care of those things. So you cannot separate the employees of the organization from the organization. You need those employees to be well. You need those employees to be engaged. You need those employees to feel appreciated.
Thanks. If I may also add, and to totally agree with Papedi, more and more, research studies are also coming out to say that another sub-pandemic that's coming out of this is burnout. Agreeing totally that, initially there were huge benefits for people to be working from home. And indeed, people went over and above for the employer to be even more productive. The problem with that is that, and when I do coach, I talk a lot about this, we teach people how to treat us. And the most important phase that I think we're going to move into is going to be about setting healthy boundaries. So while employees initially went over and above to work because they are appreciating working from home, what it did is that it created in employers this expectation that the employee is available 24/7. Because it is assumed that they no longer need to take the 2-3 hours to prepare, get out of home, sit in traffic, get to the office and settle down and work. And then, people work differently. Some people are just early risers. They find it easy to work between 4 and 10 and have the rest of the day off. Others work better in the evenings. So working from home brings that benefit that you can work as and when it is convenient because no one is looking over your shoulder. However, when you also indirectly are teaching people how to treat you, because if you are then become the employee who's always available, who answers the emails at 10, 11, 12 a.m., then you create an expectation. It is no longer a miracle. When miracles stop being miracles and change into expectations, It is no longer a miracle that, oh my goodness, she answered the email at 10 p.m. It becomes an expectation. And therefore you are teaching your employer that you are the employee that answers emails at 11 p.m. And guess what? They're going to be sending emails. And if you're not answering at 11 p.m., there's a problem. Yeah. So the sub-pandemic that is coming out of this is that, more and more employees are facing burnout. Yeah, especially those that are working from home, because the physical boundary between office and home has disappeared. And some people have a difficult time managing family time and work time. The intrusion into family time by work, when there's no longer, because in the past you left the office at 4. Of course, if you're an executive, you've always been working 24/7, let's face it. If you're an executive, that's how it's always been, COVID or no COVID. But when generally the other employee physically left the physical office, got into a car, drove, sat in traffic, got home, that wall has gone away. So the new work, the future of work would be for an employee perspective and from a wellness perspective, ensuring that you create healthy boundaries. To be very intentional, this I cover in my book, to be very intentional about setting healthy boundaries in your personal life and in the workplace. And how do you do that? You teach people through behavior. Yeah. During the time when you are required to be productive, be productive. Ensure you achieve your KPIs. Ensure that you do what's expected. Ensure you do all of that. But when you are doing a favor by answering emails at 8 p.m., let it not be an expectation. So those are the new ways in which, the workplace is going to need to sort of balance, because especially for those that are going to continuously work from home. And human beings are human beings. For those that know that when in the past, it was whether my jacket was on the chair and therefore it was assumed I was there and physically there, currently it's logging in. The jacket, the logged on has replaced the jacket on the chair at the office. So the people that have always been lazy at the office and use their physical presence as an excuse are going to use being locked in as an excuse for being involved. So apart from setting healthy boundaries in this area, how employers also ensure that the employees are engaged, truly feel like they belong. Even for those employers that are going to create, hot desks, as they say, maybe you work 3 days at work, at home, and 2 days at the office, and there's a hot desk. No longer has their personal desk to sit at, etc. Creating a sense of community amongst employees is very important. Even if you have a hybrid system that, or a roster system, because some employers are saying we're going to continue with the roster system and it works best, or whatever it is that you work, ensuring that people feel connected, because connectedness is not only in terms of our personal relationship, also the relationships. That was another loss. When COVID happened, people lost that physical connection, lost that sense of connecting with their colleagues, and that of itself is a sense of loss. So employers also need to think about, especially when they are going to be placing a lot of people, to remote, that are going to be permanently on a remote working arrangement, to create the sense of community, the sense of engagement. And this here, I totally agree with you, everybody, the sense of, of belonging, etc. It becomes especially important. In the past, when we taught talent management, these were the things when we said that, now we talk about the Z generation, the 2000. Prior to them was the what you call them, the Y generation, whatever they used to be called. The way that they approach life, the millennials, that's the word. We used to use the word millennials. The millennials are thinking about the workplace, and what it means is that they place a lot more value in how they're being treated. They place a lot more value in feeling that my employer appreciates me, creates training opportunities for me, sees me as an asset. And this is going to be especially important now. And truly speaking about, this remote working, some countries, and here I want to agree with you as well, Pepati, some countries like Kenya are streets ahead in terms of embracing the 4IR. They are creating what I call an army of data workers. Of course, this can be abused, but a number of Kenyans are sitting there in their equivalent of our informal settlement and doing data work for a multiplicity of clients in Europe, in the United States, etc. And I truly believe as a country, South Africa, we need to look into that because the gig economy, as they call it, is going to grow so exponentially, where people are going to, I'm an employer part-time. I'm a business person. Obviously, all the things that you've said, Helen, are true of me. I mean, if I can avoid labor disputes, I'm going to employ people on a contractual basis. And this is the truth. And I think as South Africans, we've not really thought about that. We think that jobs, is security. COVID has taught us nothing is certain. And therefore, we need to think about what the future actually means. Where indeed we're going to get freelancers, where we're going to have this kind of jobs where people can work from any part of the world, where employers don't owe employees leave, a pension, and all those things. I mean, I can unashamedly say I'm already in that space. I work with freelancers. I don't employ anybody full-time in my business. I work with freelancers. They come and do tasks. If I don't need them, I don't need them. And I pay them for the tasks that they've received. The work I did in the US yesterday is task-based. And that's the future of work. That's where it's going. And that's how it is.
Thank you so much for those views. I see we now have some questions that have come through, and Gabelo has asked his question. Afterwards, we'll take one from Bongiwe Dube and then Marcus. So the question from Gabelo is to Ms. Mieza. What is your view on the research and development alignment with the preparation for the 4IR? My view is that we are behind and misaligned.
Thank you for that question. I think we're not just behind. I don't think we understand what 4IR means. I've heard, and I cringe every time they say this, I've heard politicians talking about 4IR as being a Teams meeting. I've heard politicians talking about 4IR as being able to submit an application form online. Now, we are, Gabelo, we are beyond, we have missed the bus completely. And this bothers me a lot, given the amount of youth that we have, the amount of unemployed graduates that we have. I think we've missed the bus completely, because I am not convinced that we even understand what does this 4IR mean. And every time you talk to people to say, look, machines will replace our jobs, machines are going to take over. I mean, 4IR is the likes of your Ubers, your Airbnbs, your Taxifys, and your Amazons, and all of that. It's nothing to what as South Africa we are talking about. And the closest we can get to catching up with 4IR is establishing industries that will assemble this equipment. We, truth be told, we don't have the capacity or the skills or the mindset to be the ones innovating the robotics. Unfortunately, that is the fact of the matter. But why are we not the ones assembling, if nothing else? Why are we not the ones assembling the iPhones? Why are we not the ones assembling the computers that come to South Africa? Why are we not partnering with countries such as India and China, mainly China, whereby in China, you look at our curriculum in South Africa, our children are still being taught recitation. They learn about who's the president and who's the deputy president. What is that going to add? What value is that adding to that child? In China, I'm told children in grade 2 and 3 are learning how to assemble. They are given a watch, disassemble that watch, continues to work at grade 3. They learn recitation about social grants. They learn the history of South Africa. They don't learn about Jan van Riebeeck. They learn about Mandela, but so what? And then Mandela was the first democratically elected president, and then what? Like, you can Google that information. So I don't think we are anywhere near catching up with the 4IR. I know the presidency has established a 4IR committee. As far as I recall, and I stand to be corrected, in that 4IR community, it's mainly made up of professors and academia. There is no youth representative. There is, I think, no one under 30 years old. And the fact of the matter is 4IR is not something that you're going to learn in a university. 4IR is not something that you need to go to school to. I mean, we know in the ICT circle that by the time you complete your junior degree in IT, that information is obsolete. There is no textbook now that can tell you about 4th IR. There isn't. 4th IR is about innovating and being efficient in everything that you do. And as South Africa, unfortunately, we are nowhere near that. One of the things that we will have to do, whether we like it or not, unfortunately, we need to amend our labor laws. I know if there's any union members in here, they will fight with me. But the fact of the matter is our labor laws are debilitating for business. Of course, they were done with good intentions. Of course, the objective and the intention was to make sure that employees are not treated unfairly and whatnot and whatnot. But what it ends up doing is that it ends up creating a situation whereby an entrepreneur who is able to create jobs, looks at the labor laws and say, look, this thing is too tedious. I would rather contract somebody illegally if they do get them illegally. And I'm not saying that all entrepreneurs do that, but we really need to review our labor laws. The fact of the matter is we are going to sign freelancing contract. We will get to a point where your employer says, look, I actually don't need you for the whole 8 hours. I just need you for 5 hours. So we can continue with this relationship, but I need you to sign a new contract. And I'm sure everybody that is in this room can attest to the fact that not all of us can work the entire 8 hours. Some days you work for 3 hours. Some days you may work for 5 hours, but you hardly ever work for the full 8 hours. And the employers are aware of that. The employers are also aware that they can actually save money from the buildings the office buildings that they have procured or that they're leasing. And instead of what we need to be also doing is looking at how do we convert all these empty office spaces into factories and into places whereby we can assemble things that we can either ship to other countries and or use within ourselves. I was very sad when I learned that they're not manufacturing necessarily. The only cell phone, they're not manufacturing, I think they assemble. The only organization that does that, which was Mara, is now closing down, notwithstanding the amount of financial injection that they've received. They were still not able to sustain themselves, because one of the things that government has done with good intention was to say all government entities must procure a Mara device. But because we are also not a patriotic country, people were like, why should I have a Mara when I can have an iPhone? Especially people that can afford to have an iPhone and a Samsung, because we don't have an appreciation of the bigger picture as well. So no, Kabelo, I don't think we are ready. I don't think we are anywhere near ready for R&D, because even our understanding is misaligned to what 4th IR actually is. Thanks.
Thanks. If I may add though, on the bright side, we really could, I mean, we had examples of, for the motor assembling, we one of the biggest, I don't have the specific stats, but Port Elizabeth now called Gqeberha, which I can really pronounce really well, but it's a model that we can follow in terms of what you're saying. We've been assembling Mercedes-Benz for how long? For the export market, VW, Mercedes-Benz, etc. We just have to upgrade that model to say what else could we do in that line. Another big area, call centers. Maybe I don't know if they're on the decline or not. Call centers is another example of prior to COVID of jobs that transcended geographical locations where. I mean, even now, you could receive a call, from call center from somebody sitting in Germany. You can hear from the English that they're speaking, they're not South African, but they could be employed by a local company. So those are the opportunities that exist for the young, for the youth that we could look into. But certainly, coding, teaching young kids coding, to agree with you, Pepadi, to teach young kids in grade school, as they call it in the US, in grade school, coding, and enabling the mind to do things. That's really the future of work. Simple. Yeah. And it's the truth. So I'm just saying all of this to agree with what you are saying.
Thank you so much. I think both Ms. Papedi and Dr. Maureen have just sparked up something that is a completely different webinar that really needs to be tackled completely. I think we have about 10 more minutes, but I'd like to, there's also a question here from Bongiwe Dube. And the question is, sometimes it happens that checking and rechecking the business continuity plans and being over-prepared may lead to analysis paralysis. How do you balance the two as part of change management? And I'm sure this is true for personal goals as well, because you look at something, you think, this is what I need to do, but then you consider all the other variations and you end up being stuck and not really moving. How can one balance this?
Is that for me?
The Dr. Marina Mesfafedi can respond. It's an open question.
May I leave it for you?
Okay. So look, I know exactly what you're talking about, but the most important part is that your business continuity plans need to be practical and implementable. My biggest frustration and the lessons learned is that most of the time, the business continuity plans are done for the auditors. They are done so that when the auditors come, we don't get an audit finding. I would rather be over prepared than under prepared. But what I would say, and I do understand, and I get your point about what you're saying about the paralysis analysis that you're referring to. But if the paralysis analysis is practical, it's based on business continuity plans that are practical, then rather than business impact plans that you see, even when you're looking at them on paper, that this thing does not make sense. This thing, it is not even implementable. I mean, what you need to do when you're preparing a business impact assessment analysis rather is that you need to go through various scenarios, because truth be told, you don't know which scenario is going to hit you. It might be a cyber attack, as it was in my case. It might be a building burning down, as it was the case when at the Monitoria burned down in 1997, and most of the documents burnt together with the building. It may be just imagine if, well, at least now we no longer travel as much as we used to. It may be a situation whereby it may be a situation whereby you have executives that are getting involved in a flight well, worst case, maybe let me not use the example of executives crashing in one aircraft at the same time. But it may be a situation whereby all your executive or 4 of your executive test positive for COVID, and for 6 months or for three weeks, they're not able to operate. What is it that you're going to do? And you need to be able to say that in the event of this scenario, in the event that this is the scenario, this is what we'll do. In the event that this is the scenario, this is what we do. But what I found with the business continuity plans that we have, they are really vague. They talk about the fact that in case of fire, this is the assembling point, and then the building only has one exit. Now, if the building starts at that exit, and when you have only one exit, how is that going to help you? Are you going to have people getting out through the windows? Are you even prepared for people getting out of the windows? Do you know how many people in the organization will not be able to run down the stairs, for example? Do you know how many people that are disabled, and where are they located? And do you know who is assigned to those disabled people to assist them in a case of fire, to make sure that they exit out of the building with immediate effect? But when you look at most of this business continuity plan, they say nothing about any of that. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And our last question is from Marcus. How can we possibly make the country aware of the 4IR upcoming crisis, especially the youth, because majority still believe that the old career paths, such as studying to be a medical doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, etc., will earn them a living in the future? Dr. Marine, can I start with you on that one? Because on one of your slides, you touched on understanding your why. So I think this question is also, very good in terms of aligning that and speaking more on that. Are you still on mute, Dr. Marie?
Sorry about that. Yeah, here's the thing. Yeah, so from a coaching perspective, okay, I leave the 4IR for her because that's Pepadi's place. But here's the thing. If you have an understanding that says everything else starts with self, right? even as change happens. Look, I'm trained in law. I have a PhD in international law. I guess in some ways I might have had, a thinking of the future. I've always been the person who is multi-career. People ask me, what is the international lawyer doing in coaching, in leadership, in tourism? But to me personally, it all makes sense, because all of it, if you can, and I like this was said by T.D. Jakes. He said, if you can explain what is the common denominator that explains everything that you do, then you're halfway there. Yeah. Whereas to an outsider, law and tourism and coaching and leadership don't make sense. They make perfect sense to me, because for me, the common denominator for me has always been people. So whether I'm teaching at business school, I'm training people, leaders, right? Whether I'm doing law, currently I'm doing my law through Legal Aid South Africa. I sit on the board. Legal Aid South Africa is about making legal representation available and accessible to the indigent. It's about people, right? When I do tourism, and my focus being about leadership retreats and getting people to go and focus and do the great things they'd like to do at a beautiful island, it's about people. So be clear about what is your why. My why is people. Whether I'm training, coaching, leadership, lawyering, teaching, that's my why. And my why is, if you can empower the self, you are able to empower the people, because the self will be able to do the things that are necessary. The individual, I truly believe in the sense of individual agency. It has to start at individual agency. If the individual sees the role for themselves, for what they can contribute, if they can see their role as far as empowering the greater good, then we're halfway there. And when you create a critical mass of people that understand that it's important for me to achieve what I want, what is important to me, but how is this going to impact others positively and the greater world and the greater good positively, then we're going to do great.
Thank you.
As a people.
As a people. Very important fact there. Ms. Papedi, would you like to add anything or?
Yeah, so just to add on that, I think it's more than in addition to what Dr. Dong has said, is that we owe it to the upcoming youth to be frank and honest with them, and maybe it's because we don't know how to be frank with them, and we don't know how to talk about these things, because when we grow up, our generation, we're told, go to school, get good grades, get a degree, and you'll get a good, fine job. And that is what we are instilling even in the youth of today. The truth of the matter is that, yes, the degrees and the diplomas, the national diplomas and the degrees may have worked and will work for some people. But I always, every time beginning of the year, they talk about NFSAS. Well, in my days, it was called TEFSA. NFSAS and people, everybody wanting to go to universities. And I'm like, but all these people that want to go to universities, they want to go to universities to be employees. But that is because of the conversations that we are having in our own homes. The conversations we are having in our own homes is that you need to have a BSc degree so that you can be appointed by Samsung, you can be appointed by IBM. Nobody talks about the fact that you can actually work for yourselves. Nobody talks about the fact that it's okay not to make good grades in grade 12, because you can also work for yourselves. You can be a plumber, you can go to an FET college and you can work with your hands. We don't have those conversations. And the reason we're not able to have this conversation is that we don't know any better. When I grew up, my parents told me that the best job that I can ever have is that of being a government employee, because both my parents were government employees. And I also became a government employee for a very, very, very long time. And I learned many years after I've been a government employees, that I think we were sold a lie. This thing of being an employee until I turn 65 is not really what I want to do all my life. But because I don't know any better, because I don't know how to get out of this red race of waking up. I mean, for the first 12 years of my life, I remember I was told, go to school, get good grades. I got good grades. Then they said, go to university or technicon. I did that. And then my first day at work, there I was. And there was this guy who was selling insurance, and they said that I need to sign off for a life cover. And I'm like, but I was told that once I finish my school, I'll live a better life. Why am I already preparing for death? And this is my first day at work. But that is because that's all we've known. That's all we've been taught. How about teaching our kids to say, look, you don't have to be an A student in maths. Just understand arithmetic in order for you to be able to sign off an invoice. Understand arithmetic so that you can be able to balance your books and stuff like that. But then once you've done that, go and learn how to be a plumber. Go and learn how to do, there's so many, an electrician, and some of these qualifications, some of these things that you can be self-employed and self-sufficient about, you don't need a degree. Now, what we are doing is that everybody wants to go to a degree. As a government with good intentions, they've introduced a free education for higher education, and now everybody wants to have a qualification. Our parents are saying to our subordinates, not subordinates, to our siblings, you must get a degree so that you can be like Papedi and be a CIO at your job, and that is not necessary. So, Marcus, to answer your question, we need to have these conversations around the dinner table. When a child is not doing well in maths, we need to tell them it is okay. It's not the end of the world. There are other careers that you can follow, and make them aware of those careers. Because what we have done is that we have cast out a lot of the youth because they felt matric, they felt like it was the end of the world, because as the parents and as the neighborhood, and we don't know any better. All that we know and all that we are taught is that go to school, get good grades, so that you can find yourself a government job. And unfortunately, that is unsustainable. And that is not working, because, we are here. I was surprised. We are here. Some of us are employed. We are over 40. There are 25-year-olds that have not been employed. There are even 30-year-olds that are not even employed. And the question becomes, what's going to happen to those of us that are the current cohort of employees when we retire at 65 and at 60? What is going to happen to a 45-year-old who has never been employed all their life, and them having to take over from us, those that started working when we were 23? So I think we need to start having those conversations around the dinner table. I don't think the politicians with all good intentions, they understand what is coming. I don't think they understand the implications of 4th IR, but it's something that is the conversations that we need to have in our own homes. Thanks.
Thanks. And if I may add on that, here's the thing also. I am PhD. I was the straight A student. I am that person, right? My son is not. It's about the values that we also place on different abilities. My son is, give him anything to do with his hands, he will excel. And it's about that acceptance that is true. Not everyone is A, and is my child. He's a child of a straight A parent, right? But he's not, he's gifted differently. He's gifted to use his hands. And I think it's about us as a society starting to value and not downplay those careers that, that require people to use their hands. True, not everyone is a straight A person. Not everyone is gifted to have those big intellectual degrees. I can do another page in the next 5 years if I wanted. I'm capable of doing it. I can do 3 more. That's how I'm gifted. But others are not gifted that way. And it's about, and I think as a society, it's really about, we talk about industrialization, but I don't think we talk enough until we value. In the past, Afrikaners used to call them ambach, They sent their kids to go and learn ambach. They came back and they were, they were boiler makers, they were electricians, they did all these things. When we came into government, we started to look down on those kinds of careers until we as a society start to really say, there are different abilities. And in coaching, we talk about, being the best version of yourself. If the best version of myself is to use my hands, that's what I need to play at. And that's what I need to empower. And that's how I'm going to get ahead as a person and be the best that I can be. Because this version of myself is not the same version of another person. It's not the same version of another. So, and you look at other, I started my PhD in Sweden, finished in France. In Sweden, the education system at grade 7, the child can completely, the children that are gifted with their hands, completely come out of the academic line and follow career from what we call grade 7, from that point onwards, so that we do not have the situation that every January, February, when the matric results come, you know, it's just by grace of God that not many teenagers are not killing themselves in that month. Imagine, you know, when the pressure of children that are not academically gifted to have to be seen as failures, because when the matric results come out, they did not have 8 distinctions. There's nothing wrong with those children. They're just gifted differently. And as a society, until we have that understanding and give those children a chance to excel and be great, you know, citizens of South Africa, and to contribute in a good, you know, positively to our economy and to our lives, only then would we really, really, really be a fully inclusive society as a people. And that can have a very big ripple effect into our economy. She's talking about assemblers. Why are we not training young people who are not straight A's to get into those jobs? And it takes a shift. It takes that shift that says it's not about everyone going to university. I honestly believe that we can do more as far as our TVET colleges are concerned, to give them the same prestige, to give them the prestige that they require, so that children that are not gifted, you know, intellectually, but are gifted differently, can excel and be great and be celebrated. And be celebrated and not feel ashamed that, you know, I'm just the electrician, I'm just the, you know, I'm just in a trade school or whatever it is. Those are the skills that we need as a society. And those are the skills that are going to empower. We talk about how, and it's true, we are not, you know, entrepreneurially minded, etc., etc. As those kids come out of TVET colleges, we need to create an enabling environment in our economy where they can be, you know, gainfully absorbed, either as small companies into the SMME, you know, sector, but so they can, the bigger, the more, the ripple effect of that, when you have more and more and more and more and more children coming out of grade 7 following, either whether it's a technical line, whether it's your Ambach line, whatever it is, and you have more and more of them coming out, qualifying, be celebrated equally as those that are getting straight A's, because that is their ability, and not have this hierarchy that, you know, if you are having 8 distinctions, you are better, you're just gifted that way, others are gifted differently. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maureen. Thank you, Ms. Papedi, for your insights on, you know, all the questions that we've received. I note we have one last comment from Mbodi. And Mbodi's comment is, she agrees with Ms. Mieza. SA is not ready for the 4IR. 4IR requires highly skilled labor, and the SA labor market is concentrated with lower skilled laborers. And this will result in a new useless class if not dealt with. So I think we can all agree that we really need to unpack 4IR very differently as a country, and, you know, as the BMF, when we are driving policy changes or, you know, whatever we're engaging with, this is really something that we do need to tackle with the insight that we have received today. Thank you so much firstly to our guest, Dr. Maureen, Ms. Papedi, thank you so much for availing yourselves and sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have today. We really don't take for granted the preparation and the time to actually come to us here. Thank you to our leadership for putting together such a session. And thank you to all the attendees and participants that asked their questions and sat through the entire session. The session has been recorded and it will be shared by our national crew. I see they are online today. And once again, thank you so much for honoring us for today. We will be engaging further with our members. You can engage with us in our group. We will be having a members meeting as well in the next coming weeks, but we'll communicate that as time goes by. Is there any other thing that you'd like to add, Chair, or can we close the meeting?
For me, thanks. Thank you so much, Papedi. I really liked that line you used. Never waste a good crisis. COVID happened. We didn't expect it. It's here. It's had its many benefits. And as both individual, as you know, as a people, and in the greater good, let's embrace the opportunities, because this has brought challenges and lots of them, but it brought opportunities. Let's embrace change. The only concept now is change. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you very much, Dr. Maureen, for your insight, and to thank as well at BMF for this opportunity as well. We look forward to engaging you further. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ms. Renee, is there anything else, or can we close the meeting?
Okay, thank you, Nolwazi, for driving the program for us tonight. It goes without saying that there are actually valuable contributions which were made from this session, and added to that, it's a need to reform both labor policies of the country, and again the education curriculum, specifically speaking to the issue of IT, because the curriculum that we are having given to the current cohort of the students entering the basic education will not actually equip them sufficiently for the world ahead that we are going to. So actually there's an urgent edge and need to fast track a policy reform in terms of for education in the country. Partly on the issue of labor reforms, an associate of ours once spoke and asked a valid question to say, what then happens for a IT audit risk manager who works for South Africa and get based in UK? There are serious simplifications which actually we are missing in terms of labor law, including again on taxation simplification. So I agree in principle with all of you that we need actually to relook at this urgently, but we also need to look at the middle class. You know, the middle class is part of the critical mass which drives change in the country. If it becomes aloof, things fall apart. And I think one of the things that should be agitated for is that the middle class must move at possibly supersonic speed to catch up, to align with times. There's a valid question which was asked of alignment with fourth industrial revolution. Sadly, in our country, generally, you find fourth industrial revolution used as a buzzword, and that should not be the case. I think we should take center stage over from politicians when they believe that fourth industrial will mean now that my Z83 will no longer be submitted through a box but by email. Actually, those are far less than the issue that we should be concerned with. Not to be a deputy speaker for tonight's session, we are grateful forever more and more to our speakers who jumped onto the occasion to speak to us tonight. We've been enlightened, and on policy aspects, be rest assured that an invitation will come again to speak to the labor reforms. I know Dr. Maureen Dong, you are there on the side of law, and I also know that Paped, you are there on the side of IT, and obviously the economy of this country will have to migrate quickly to economic terms. But again, we cannot leave the aspect of law and the labor law. So be ready to receive more engagement requests from ourselves, and we'll also be looking at a way of sending a little token of appreciation to you, at least to say it will not come digital, or it will not use fourth industrial revolution ideas, because we could just punch it on email. But we are genuinely grateful for having made time to speak to us tonight. And that said, the session is officially closed. We thank you very much. Good night.